It was the first day of school in the quiet town of Alderbrook, and Eleanor Hargrove, a soft-spoken but intelligent senior, walked into room 12. As she entered, she noticed the classroom was strangely silent, a sharp contrast to the usual chatter and laughter. Her teacher, Mrs. Matthews, stood near the chalkboard, her face pale as if she had seen a ghost. "Eleanor, come in." "You're just in time," Mrs. Matthews said, her voice strained. Eleanor sat at her desk, scanning the chalkboard. A message was written in perfectly clear chalk. "At 10:13 a.m., a student will faint in the hallway." Eleanor frowned. Who wrote this? She had been in this classroom for 3 years, and nothing like this had ever happened before. "Are you okay, Mrs. Matthews?" Eleanor asked, sensing something was wrong. Mrs. Matthews merely nodded but didn't look at her. "I'll explain later, Eleanor." As the morning wore on, Eleanor couldn't shake the strange feeling in the pit of her stomach. At exactly 10:13 a.m., she heard a commotion in the hallway. She stood up and peeked out the door, seeing a student, Jake, collapse to the floor. His friends screamed for help, and the nurse was immediately called. Eleanor returned to her desk, heart racing. The chalkboard had predicted the exact event down to the minute. She turned to Mrs. Matthews, who was now looking at her with a mix of fear and wonder. Did you see that?" Eleanor whispered. Mrs. Matthews nodded gravely. "It's happening again." The next day, Eleanor came to school early, feeling more anxious than ever. She approached the chalkboard cautiously. Another message appeared overnight. "At 1:47 p.m., the school bell will malfunction, and no one will hear it ring." Eleanor tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but as the day went on, the events unfolded just as predicted. The school bell, which had always worked perfectly, suddenly stopped ringing at precisely 1:47 p.m. The students continued with their lessons unaware until Mrs. Matthews entered, apologizing for the inconvenience. Eleanor was certain now, something supernatural was at play. That afternoon, Eleanor stayed behind to talk to Mrs. Matthews. The classroom was empty except for the two of them. Eleanor asked, "How long has this been happening?" "The chalkboard, it knows things." "What is going on?" Mrs. Matthews hesitated before speaking. "It started a month ago. The chalkboard, it's been writing things that came true. At first I thought it was a prank, but when I saw the event unfold exactly as written, I knew we were dealing with something else. I don't understand it, Eleanor. But I've seen the future in its chalky words, and now you are a part of it." Eleanor swallowed. "But why me? Why now?" "I don't know," Mrs. Matthews admitted. "But I believe you may be the key to stopping whatever is happening." As the days went on, the chalkboard's predictions grew darker. Every morning, it revealed something eerie or ominous. One day it wrote, "At 3:33 p.m., the fire alarm will trigger, and the school will be evacuated. But not everyone will return." The students followed procedure and evacuated, but Eleanor noticed a shadowy figure lurking near the back of the school grounds. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, even as the fire drill concluded uneventfully. Later, she found out that one of the seniors, Amanda, had gone missing during the drill. Her disappearance remained a mystery. Eleanor, now deeply involved in the mystery, began investigating. She combed through old yearbooks, looking for any clues. The school had always been quiet and peaceful, but there were whispers of an ancient curse tied to the building, a curse that the chalkboard had somehow awakened. One evening, Eleanor stayed late at school, determined to uncover the truth. As she approached the chalkboard, a new message had appeared. "At midnight, Eleanor will uncover the truth about the chalkboard. But in doing so, she will awaken an ancient evil." Eleanor shuddered. It was clear that the chalkboard was now manipulating events to lead her towards something unknown. She had to figure out what it wanted before it was too late. The next morning, Eleanor brought a flashlight to school and ventured into the basement, where old records and artifacts from the original school were kept. Among dusty old books, she found a journal belonging to the school's first principal, Dr. Edgar Penrose. the journal spoke of a curse placed on the school after an unspeakable event. The first principal had been obsessed with predicting the future, and in his obsession, he had made a pact with dark forces. His chalkboard had been the key to this dark magic, allowing him to predict and manipulate events. However, the price was steep. He lost his sanity, and the school was left haunted by his actions. Eleanor returned to the classroom, heart pounding. The chalkboard glowed faintly, as if waiting for her. She placed her hand on it, and a surge of cold energy ran through her. Suddenly, the chalkboard wrote, "Only the one who holds the key can stop the future. You must decide, save the school or lose everything." Eleanor's mind raced. Was she the one who held the key? What did it mean? As she wondered, she felt Mrs. Matthews' presence behind her. "I think I know what must be done," Mrs. Matthews said, her voice resolute. Together, Eleanor and Mrs. Matthews discovered the way to break the curse. They had to destroy the chalkboard and erase all traces of Dr. Penrose's writings. But as they stood before it, Eleanor hesitated. The chalkboard had given her so many answers, but now it seemed to demand a sacrifice. Suddenly, the chalkboard began to glow violently, the words shifting rapidly, as if fighting to remain. Eleanor knew that breaking it would sever the connection to the future, but it would also erase all the knowledge she had gained. "I can't do it," Eleanor shouted, but Mrs. Matthews stepped forward. "You must, Eleanor. For all of us." With a final breath, Eleanor grabbed a nearby hammer and smashed the chalkboard. The room shook as if the very foundations of the school were trembling. When the dust settled, the chalkboard lay in pieces, its words forever silenced. But as the last of the chalkboard's glow faded, Eleanor felt a strange weight lifted from her shoulders. She knew the curse had been broken. The next day, life at the school seemed to return to normal. Amanda was found alive but with no memory of what had happened. The strange prediction ceased, and the school was no longer haunted by the unsettling presence of the chalkboard. As the weeks passed, Eleanor couldn't help but wonder what might have been if she had never destroyed the chalkboard. The future would always be unknown, but she had made her choice. And perhaps, in the end, it was better that way. One morning, as Eleanor entered room 12, she noticed a small chalk mark on the desk, a faint reminder of the mysterious force that had once shaped her world. But this time, the chalkboard was empty. Words to say for ending. In the end, Eleanor learned that every decision carries weight, and some truths are too powerful to control. Though the curse was broken, the mystery of the chalkboard stayed with her, a constant reminder that the future is never fully in our hands. As she left, a lingering sense of unease told her that the story wasn't over, and that something unknown was still out there, waiting. For now. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe, like, share and leave a comment to support this channel. Stay tuned for more lost stories and folktales.